St. Augustine, commentary on the Gospel of John, chapter 16, following. Wherefore, beloved, you need not expect to hear from us what the Lord then refrained from telling his disciples, because they were unable to bear them, but rather seek to grow in the love that is shed abroad in your hearts by the Holy Spirit, who is given unto you. Romans chapter 5, verse 5. That fervent in spirit and loving spiritual things you may be able, not by any sign apparent to your bodily eyes, or any sound striking on your bodily ears, but by the inward eyesight and hearing, to become acquainted with that spiritual light and that spiritual word which carnal men are unable to bear. For that can't be loved which is altogether unknown. But when what is known in however small a measure is also loved by the self-same love, one is led on to a better and fuller knowledge. If then you grow in the love which the Holy Spirit spreads abroad in your hearts, he will teach you all truth. Or, as other codices have it, he will guide you in all truth. Chapter 6. As it is said, lead me in your way, O Lord, and I will walk in your truth. Psalm 86, verse 11. So shall the result be that not from outward teachers will you learn those things which the Lord at that time declined to utter, but be all taught by God. But be all taught of God. Chapter 6, verse 45. So that the very things which you have learned and believed by means of lessons and sermons, supplied from without regarding the nature of God as incorporeal and unconfined by limits, yet not walled out as a mass of matter through infinite space, but everywhere whole and perfect and infinite, without the gleaming of colors, without the tracing of bodily outlines, without any markings of letters or succession of syllables, your minds themselves may have the power to perceive. Well, now I have just said something which is perhaps of that same character, and yet you have received it, and you have not only been able to bear it, but have also listened to it with pleasure. But where that inward teacher who, while still speaking in an external way to the disciples, said, I have still many things to say unto you, but you can't bear them now, wishing to speak inwardly to us of what I have said of the incorporeal nature of God, in the same way as he speaks to the angels who always behold the face of the Father. Matthew chapter 18, verse 10. We should still be unable to bear them. Accordingly, when he says he will teach you all truth, or will guide you into all truth, I do not think the fulfillment is possible in anyone's mind in this present life. For who is there while living in this corruptible and soul-oppressing body? To Wisdom chapter 9, verse 15. That can know all truth, when even the Apostle says, we know in part, but because it is effected by the Holy Spirit, of whom we have now received the earnest. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 22. That we shall attain also to the actual fullness of knowledge, whereof it is said by the same apostle, but then face to face. And now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9 and 12. Not as a thing which he knows fully in this life, but which as a thing that would still be future on to the attainment of that perfection, the Lord promised us through the love of the Spirit when he said, He will teach you all truth, or will guide you unto all truth. As these things are so beloved, I warn you in the love of Christ to beware of impure seducers and sects of obscene filthiness, whereof the Apostle says, But it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 12. Lest when they begin to teach their horrible impurities, which no human ear whatever can bear, they declare them to be the very things whereof the Lord said, I have yet many things to say unto you, but you can't bear them now, and assert that it is the Holy Spirit's agency that makes such impure and detestable things possible to be borne. The evil things which no human modesty whatever can endure are of one kind, and of quite another are the good things which man's little understanding is unable to bear. The former are wrought in unchaste bodies, the latter are beyond the reach of all bodies. The one is perpetrated in the filthiness of the flesh, the other is scarcely perceivable by the pure mind. Be you therefore renewed in the spirit of your mind. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 23. And understand what is the will of God, which is good and acceptable and perfect. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. That, rooted and grounded in love, you may be able to comprehend with all saints what is the length and breadth and height and depth, even to know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 17 to 19. For in such a way will the Holy Spirit teach you all things, teach you all truth, when he shall shed abroad that love evermore and more largely in your hearts.